Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Bellevue School District. Today is Thursday, April 6th, and the time is 4:30 p.m. At this time, we will do roll call.
Jane Norris.
Christine Chu. Seema Sarafan.
Joyce Shuey.
Carolyn Watson.
Superintendent Art Jarvis.
Thank you. Superintendent Jarvis, would you, actually, I take that back. Executive Director Harrison, would you please introduce tonight's student?
It would be my pleasure. So tonight we have for you Amira Huck. She's a senior at Bellevue High School. And with her in support is her teacher, social studies teacher, Mr. Litzenberger from Bellevue High School at the back. And Amira, if you would come on up, that would be great. I'll make sure this microphone is on. To lead us in the pledge.
Okay, just testing if it works.
Thank you. So whenever you're ready, you can start and we will follow you.
Okay. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. And now for the land acknowledgement.
Yes, thank you.
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Duwamish and Snoqualmie tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historic context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their guidance.
Thank you. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good evening. I hope everybody here is doing well, and I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. To begin, I would love to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Amira Huck. I'm a senior at Bellevue High School, and I'm currently committed to the Claremont Consortium in California for political science and soccer in the fall. In my preparation process for today, I've decided to use this time as sort of a reflection and somewhat exit interview from my time in the Bellevue School District. I recognize that many public comments tend to prioritize the most urgent or modern issues due to the amount of time given, but I would love to use this time to discuss the topics that may not be covered but are still very present in our school district. And at my school, I have been the president of our social justice club since my sophomore year, while also engaging in various affinity groups, advocacy projects, and sports during my time. Over the 4 years, I have found teachers willing to put in so many extra hours just for students' passions, administrators who are always on board with a project that would benefit our society at school, and just great coaches who enforce great athletic and academic habits. I found the approach to change was accepted by most, but there are still a few reoccurring issues and unseen struggles that I feel need to be brought to light. So the pandemic hit us at the end of my freshman year, and the effort and the energy that all of our teachers spent trying to engage with the students that struggled to turn their cameras on was very noticeable, especially because I was a student who refused to turn their camera on. But I want to show all of our gratitude as students towards our teachers that were going through the same situation, but we're still able to show up for us, even if the energy wasn't reciprocated. We're continuing to improve our mental health systems for students at school, but I do think there is something that needs to be said for the teachers as well. Back in in-person school, I've seen my teachers experience panic attacks, cope with loss, and seem either emotionally numb or emotionally overwhelmed. And I feel like it's all because they're pushing their emotions aside to teach us and prioritize their profession, which is great. But I just think it's time to view our teachers as human beings that struggle with issues, addiction, and flaws that they're working to overcome. I would recommend maybe establishing scheduled teacher affinity groups, and maybe developing a resource, acting like a counselor for teachers and staff, similar to the ones that students have. Another opportunity for growth, as many of you may overlook or not know exists, but for female students, this can be very influential. and impactful. The feminine products at our school are lower quality cardboard, and without going into much detail, they can get a little uncomfortable. So I know some schools create clubs in order to raise funds for better products, but student comfort and undisturbed learning should be prioritized. I would be happy to discuss potential alternatives in the near future when this issue is explored. But in being an activist, being at the core of my identity, to come here and to not talk about sustainability or equity would just be out of character for me. So I've had the privilege of working with Director John Harrison on a potential sustainability policy for our school district. And I'm sure everybody's aware, but if you are not, the Bellevue School District has 253 policies, and this could be our first one towards sustainability. This policy is number 6811, and it works to reduce our energy usage, carbon emission, through alternative methods of transportation, education, et cetera. And history classes, like Mr. Litzenberger's, have begun to bridge the gap between learning and action and giving students options of involvement on this policy as well. And it just makes me really, really excited to see student body actively supporting new policies. And I feel really refreshed at the potential our school district has to lead all schools in the direction of environmental awareness, because that is what I've been working towards and throughout my time here. And I just further encourage the implementation of that policy and the involvement of students on these decisions in general. But in my experience, the Bellevue School District cares so deeply for their students that I trust that everybody would listen to the future activists as they learn how to make demands and how to properly execute projects towards a progressive society. I have also made a lot of connections with so many staff members, and I have the support of Mr. Litzenberger today too to show that, as well as having the honor to speak with our new superintendent a few times. And I have so much confidence in this generation of educators to find a light in each student to help them thrive. I know I have found my identity here, and I feel very well prepared to continue my education and activism elsewhere. And I know I crammed a lot of information into this time, but it's all just in good hope that everybody gets the representation that they deserve. So thank you so much for having me today, and I hope the remainder of the meeting goes well.
Thank you so much, Amira. We turn now to acknowledgements. I will try to read all of them quickly. They are projected on screen. This is Arab American Heritage Month, Autism Acceptance Month, Earth Month, Poetry Month, National Occupational Therapy Month, School Library Month. And looking at the specific days, April Fool's Day, April 2nd, World Autism Awareness Day, April 3rd, Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, April 2nd, Palm Sunday, April 3rd to April 7th, Assistant Principal Appreciation Week, April 4th, National Library Workers Day and National School Librarian Day, April 6th to April 13th, Passover, April 6th, Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, April 9th, Easter, April 10th, Ram Navami, April 14th, Vasachi, April 15th, Good Friday, April 16th, Orthodox Easter, April 16th to April 22nd, Public School Volunteer Week, and April 18th, Laylat Al-Qadr. Okay, thank you. I now go to approval of our agenda, and for that, I ask for a second to my motion to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries. We turn now to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to approve the
Yeah,
consent agenda?
I move to pull something out of the consent agenda for later.
Okay, so there's a, all right, what item would you like to?
2.2 and 2.7.
Okay, so pulling out items 2.2 and 2.7, is there otherwise a second to approve the agenda? Consent agenda.
Seconded as
Okay.
amended.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say as amended. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Regarding 2.2 and 2.7, Director Watson, did you want to, I know that there was some
Okay.
discussion offline regarding, I think, both of those.
For 2.7, that'll be easy to say. I just got awfully confused reading that. When I was going through the consent agenda, I was like, oh, just another sip. I mean, not just, but we read like 30 of them. And then this one started talking about expenses and phasing out programs and I didn't even know that we were doing some of this. So it talks about the summit program. It talks about the Grad Alliance contract. It talks about all kinds of things. So I kind of thought it turns out after I really parsed it, it was kind of okay. You're moving away from an outside contractor to more of an in-house situation, which is something I generally approve of. But I just thought I'd take this moment to ask I would like more of like a presentation or something on that, because I just don't know. It was all new to me, which seemed odd, right? Because you'd think I'd know.
Director Chu?
Yeah, thanks, Director Watson. I was going to ask to pull that one as well. I feel like we shouldn't be approving a plan for something that we haven't even had an overview of the existence of it. And I think it would be really helpful to understand what's going on there. But before we make that call, could we find out what are the implications to delaying the approval of that SIP to next meeting? Are there any major implications, or would that be acceptable?
Okay, let's hear it, because I expected 2.2, and I did find that there is an implication for delaying 2.2, and I think we can address that. But Dr. Jarvis, can anybody address 2.7?
I would agree. 2.2 will have some ramifications. 2.7, we had not had any questions come up. So in this case, I'll ask Cole if we can't provide the information, then we will pull that. But
Okay.
Deputy Eva Collins on Teaching and Learning, could you talk about the Grad Alliance?
Well, if we're going to carry it over, I've got to say tonight's agenda is really packed. And I've had several board directors say, don't do anything that cuts our director discussion, which I appreciate. We do, though, have annual plan, executive session. All of this means we end at
We
8:30.
will bring that one back.
So I say let's
So-
carry over 2.7 with the request that on the 17th of April, before that time, we get the information. So in advance of that. So if we can get that possibly with Executive Director's update tomorrow, Executive Director Harrison's update tomorrow, that would give us time to review it. We can talk as needed on the 17th, and then we can have it on the consent agenda, the regular consent agenda on the 20th.
Are you sure they could scramble to get something in time? Because I'm thinking what I really wanted was like a regular presentation or slideshow or some kind of narrative.
Okay, why don't we find out first what we have, and then it's either going to be information that satisfies the answer, or after we get information, we can decide if we need to add it to the agenda on the 20th in terms of presentation, or if there's information we can get on the 17th that will be sufficient. So I think in the interest of giving staff time to figure that out, let's do that. On 2.2, I think I'm going to ask Dr. Aramaki or Dr. Jarvis, you can tell us, but I know by email we got information about the
might
question
ask-
raised by Director Watson by email.
What is the question?
I'll let Director
Well-
Watson bring it up, but I think it was fleshed out a bit by email, but not
Okay,
entirely.
I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, which is there's a field trip going to a Bible camp, and that causes me concern because we have to pay rental fees to that camp, and it just seems like not quite right. And also, kids who don't share that religion may have feelings about the situation that they don't feel able to express. So it doesn't feel like an each and every child kind of thing. So what I was asking for is, did we really, we talk about our critical criteria a lot, but did we look at those from the perspective of all the different kids who would be participating? And then the answer I got was, well, we see your point, sort of. It's not really a church and state problem. They're going to cover all the symbols over, and there's no other camp that we can use. So, of course, I tried hunting for camps, because I know Interlake used to go up to Fort Flagler with a whole bunch of kids, but an Islandwood only can hold 200 and they want to take 400. So, but it says in it that camp needs to be 1.5 hours from here. And I know I believe that is because some of the teachers and chaperones want to be able to come for some of the time and go back and forth or leave before the camp is over, that sort of thing. So seems to me that if we went a little further, we might be able to find something. I just heard about a ranch over in Ellensburg. Anyway, I am going to, even with all these reservations, vote yes, because you're telling me that if I vote no, these 400 kids are going to lose the field trip that they're looking forward to. But this is the third time this has happened.
So I agree with many of the concerns you've raised, Director Watson, and I'm glad that you keep us honest about that. It's an important conversation. I also believe that effective governance means that when we have an issue that comes up multiple times, we need to look to our governance tools. And so when I look at policy 2320 and the accompanying procedure, I don't really see clarity and guidance around what this would be. And I think that it's on us as a board to go back and outline what our expectations are. Because I think there are two things here. One is we don't want students, because in the past they have been subjected to religious expectations unintentionally. And I believe that the district has done a lot of work to make sure that's not going to happen again. But again, it's not really clear in our policy. So I think there are two situations. One is we could just take the route of never, ever, ever under any circumstances, or we take the route of saying that under some circumstances it may be appropriate. If that is the case, these are the requirements for what must be in place. And then there's clarity, and we're not dealing with it as an operational issue. We've put the policy out there, we're governing, and we move on. So I'm just going to ask if the board would give permission to add 2320 to our list of policies to adjust. I don't think it's going to take a horde of work to do this one.
So I would suggest, I don't believe it was in our rolling policy list the last time we updated it, which was a couple of weeks ago. So I would say for the policy 2320, speaking to religious activity in schools, we asked Executive Director Harrison between now and we connect on, I will just say we will run out of the other things on our list. Between now and the 17th, would you please make a proposal for where you can fit this in? Because the modification potentially could be minor. You may assess that it actually requires a full review. And so where, given the priority survey we did before, would you propose putting this? And then we could on the 17th of April discuss, do we think it needs to be pulled up higher, or is your proposal the right place? I think that would align with, but what I'm hearing from Director Chu, and I think from you, is we don't necessarily hold up this instance, but we do review it. I don't remember in the last 3 or 4 years this coming up, but maybe it has.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think I just want to say that on this one, that it's important that we realize that we are not trying to punish kids for lack of clarity or lack of agreement here. And so we need to make sure they have the opportunities they deserve in an environment that is safe and inclusive and welcoming for all. And to that end, since this was brought up explicitly during the meeting, I would appreciate if Dr. Jarvis or Dr. Aramaki could give us just the very high level lowdown of how they have ensured or how they are going to ensure that this is an inclusive and welcoming space for every single student there.
So I think Dr. Aramaki addressed it by email. So would you like to bring that up now?
Sure, I can do that. It's a good question, and Director Watson, I really appreciate you bringing it up, because we don't want any of our kids to feel uncomfortable, even by just the name of where they're going. So I just want to call out that I do think that it's a very valid concern. The only thing I'll say is I think in talking with the administration at International School, I think the challenge is just simply that there aren't a lot of retreat centers or campgrounds that aren't religiously affiliated. So the ones that are rentable, tend to be have some kind of religious affiliation, including all the ones owned by like YMCA and things. And so that's the challenge that we're facing. I think it's absolutely warranted that we continue to keep looking for secular camps that don't have religious affiliation. But what they did was with international school, they had a whole bunch of criteria. It had to be a certain size. It couldn't be too big because of supervision issues. It had to be a certain distance. Part of it is, I think, for chaperones, but also part of it is for the amount of cost for transportation and buses and things like that. And so looking at all of that, they were able to come up with 4 that kind of fit their criteria. All 4 of them had some kind of religious affiliation, but they were given assurances from the camp that they could cover up the symbols and things like that, and that they wouldn't use the areas that were like the chapel and things like that were overtly religious. And so those were the assurances that they made to international school. And so international school felt comfortable moving this forward. But it's understandable the concerns that you have about some students not feeling comfortable going to a camp that's called, Black Lake Bible Camp. So. And the school wouldn't advertise it as such, but even if families just look it up, they'll see that it's the Black Lake Bible Camp. Anyway, so I'll just put out there, it's a dilemma for us because we want to be able to give kids the opportunity. For international school, this is something that is part of their culture, and the way that they do things, and the way that they build community amongst kids. But it's a challenge in finding spaces that would fit kids for this type of purpose. So we could keep looking, and we'll continue to do so. But in this case, it's sort of, if we need to, and this is what I had mentioned in my email to you earlier, if necessary, we can tell international to keep looking. I mean, they might lose the opportunity for this campsite, but if we tell them we really like you to go back and look for someplace that's more secular or not so outright, even in the name, we can do that, and then they will go back and do that.
Okay, thank you. Executive Director Harrison, I think in terms of the follow-up, I would say not just 2320, but 2320P also, because the procedure seems perhaps equally important on this one. So when you give us an update or proposal, as well as on the 17th, if you could address both. So I think on that.
I have a clarifying question.
Sure, go ahead.
When Dr. Armaki spoke, he indicated that we could ask the school to go back. If we were to do that, would the field trip this year be canceled? I'm clear. I'm sorry, what is the date of the field trip, and right, and would it be canceled? Like, by asking them to look one more time, would we lose the opportunity?
I don't think that they wouldn't necessarily be canceled. They will lose their opportunity to go to this Black Lake camp. That's what they will miss. So they would have to look for other
But
options.
can you tell us for what date? It's for
September. So I mean,
September 23,
September 23.
2023.
And I think for a lot of these popular campsites, they fill up quickly, which is why, I mean, they're ahead of the game. They're trying to get everything in order because they need to be able to get the reservation for the site. So it's possible that they might not be able to go on the trip, but it's not until September. So they do have some time to see if there's alternate locations that they could go to. But they did, I think what the school said was they have a whole group of people who did a vetting of all of the campsites. They came up with 4 options. This was the best of the 4.
Okay, Dr. Jarvis.
Yeah, I believe the campsite is within board policy and within district practice, number 1. Number 2, I believe it's an outstanding experience and has been for the kids. Any number of school districts use that camp. They are public school systems just like us, and there's not been an issue. And I know at least one of the districts that I was previously affiliated used that camp extensively. And third is, I believe, I want to recommend it as something that is in full compliance if the board wishes to change the policy and practice on things that have an affiliation. I think there are any number of both local and broader affiliations that will come under that umbrella if you really choose to go there. But to start picking one at a time that this one is and this one isn't, I believe would put us in a really difficult position on something that's very good for kids. So I'd like to recommend the approval of 2.7.
Okay, so I do want to recognize the people online. I see our general counsel's anxious to speak, but I'd like to first hear from Vice President Shuey and then Director Aris, just in the order hands were raised. So Vice President Shuey and then Director Aris.
I appreciate Director Watson bringing our attention to this to the community, as well as the staff and board of directors. And I don't doubt that people consider multiple camps because we do that for many different reasons in terms of suitability. I have deep reservations because even in the conversation here, we have people talking about this is an opportunity for the kids, and we don't want to deny the kids an opportunity. And we want the families and parents who want to support it to be able to get there easily and within an hour and a half. But again, implicit in that phraseology and the mindset of what I'm hearing tonight is that it's people who are comfortable in a Christian camp. And if you look at the website, it is replete all over the website, very Christian focused. It's not like the YWCA, which, by the way, voted, and they are no longer the Young Women's Christian Association because they wanted to be inclusive. So the YWCA, although the heritage was Christian, it is now secular with YWCA. And so when I think about the word opportunity, I also think about the word impact, because there are children whose parents will see that and say, we're not comfortable with you going there and we will not let you go. So what happens to those, whether it's one child or 5 children or 10 children, those children are excluded from that experience and do not see that as an opportunity. So while I appreciate that all people who are very comfortable in Christian culture because they are either Christian themselves or they grew up in a setting that was highly Christian, which many of us did in this country, it is still impactful. And we are benefiting certain groups of people at the expense of other children, and it tends to be the more marginalized children, the ones who are not Christian, which is the minority in our country. And so a final thing I'd like to say is that for me, it's not about putting in a secular requirement. It's about looking at the overall balancing, and it is, I'll go back to what I've said often about the power dynamics and the power differential. And so if we were taking children to, for example, a Jewish camp or a Muslim camp, it would also feel different because you don't have as many Christians who have felt persecuted in the US by Jewish people and by Christians. And so that dynamic of who is in the dominant culture and who's in leadership, it also factors into my deep concern over deciding that this is quote unquote worth it, because I think we are prioritizing some children over others by saying it's overall worth it.
Thank you. Director Aris?
Thanks, Director Watson, for bringing this up, and I agree with Director Shui here. One of the things I do think we need to think about, I understand that it's been utilized by many other school districts, and they had a good experience, but historically, but we forget Bellevue is very unique and it's very extremely diverse. In the last 25 years, the community has warped into not just cultural differences, but the religious diversity has been become more increased. And so to acknowledge that, we need to really think about it's no longer just one, it's many. And yes, we are when we say it works for students have good experience. We forget that there are many families who do opt out because of various things like religion in that space. So I think given that we have been putting effort into being inclusive and supporting all students, that we do need to reconsider this one. Especially, I personally think sending kids with I understand covering up things is possible, but the name does make it concerning. But if for whatever reason we do move forward with this particular one, I think it is really important that we communicate with our community members the reason and why. And explain that we will be protecting all of our students' needs.
I'd like to, thank you. I'd like to hear from our general counsel, but I want to just share before you speak that I do feel like we have something missing in this equation, which is we are kind of guessing they can find another camp in time. And I have to say, the one thing that bothers me a little bit is just that we don't have much time, and so that it feels sort of like there's no margin. And so I wonder if we can maybe carry this even for a little later in our meeting. And in the meantime, can someone find out really what the assessment is? Because I think many of us might say, okay, this is one more time that we might do something that makes us uncomfortable, but maybe there's a way to communicate, as Director Ara said, to the families as to how we got here. But I will say I don't have a good sense of how really what the other options are, and it just feels to me a little bit pressured. So General Counsel McMenemy.
I was going to raise a different point, and I'll get to that in a moment. I do want to identify that I did help the school do research to identify if we could locate any alternatives, and I have done similar research for other school districts in the I-5 corridor, and I did not find anything that indicated to me that there are options that I was aware of that are new or different than the last time I looked at this issue in 2016. It is something that the school immediately had concerns about and asked for assistance with. I want to caution with respect to secular and policymaking and decision-making around the word secular. This is an area where the United States Supreme Court recently determined that what everybody believed to be the test applicable to government involvement with religious organizations is no longer valid, and that decision is very recently made. And so I would caution that before anything is done on a policy level, there are now the flip side concern of not engaging in discrimination of vendors based upon who may or may not be religious, given that there has been this substantial Supreme Court sea change in determining involvement between governmental agencies and third-party vendors.
I'm sorry, could I just ask you, General Counsel, are you giving us advice on the policy or on the decision tonight?
No, I'm just identifying, because the law has changed dramatically in this area, I would caution you against relying upon prior advice, given that there has been a very new Supreme Court decision. And so specifically related to any sort of test that involves the word secular and secular purpose and desire for secular over non-religious, this is a new area of law that's being fleshed out. And I would caution the board that there is a flip side potential legal exposure for using whether or not an entity has a religious affiliation would become an issue of potential vulnerability for the district in a different way because of changes in recent law.
Thank you. Director Chu?
Yeah, I just want to comment. Thank you, Counselor. I think that what we really need to sort out here, we can sort out the policy and how to do it right offline. I want to keep front and center what we need to keep front and center, which is not legal constraints. I think legal constraints are something that help us, do things in the right way. But front and center is our commitment to inclusion. Students need to feel welcome and included in these environments. And in the past, we were told that kids would feel welcomed and included, and there were things that happened that made that not the case. So what I want to, like, for me to vote on this for tonight, I would need to know what we've done to assure, not just we looked at it and it doesn't look too bad, but what will we do to ensure that each kid is protected? You can't go back and ask the kids, hey, are you guys each okay with that? Because that puts incredible pressure on any kid who might not be okay with it. And I would like an answer before the end of this meeting, but when we vote, to know if we would lose our deposit, like, is tonight the last night that we can do this? Or do we have another 2 weeks where they could do a little more research? What are the options here? Because
Okay.
it's about kids feeling completely supported and included. That's what our goal is.
Agree. I think I'm going to ask if we can bring this back as part of our board business. So that gives us a little time for staff in the room to perhaps see if you can get some answers that address some of the points raised. So the key points raised really were around, I'll say first, timing. Do we lose a deposit? How much, what is their assessment for what the alternative is? What things have been done to check in with the students who would be going on this trip and their comfort level as well as understanding of the environment? Those kinds of things, if you could circle back, I think we can move forward. I think I'm going to suggest that we do I see a hand up? Sorry, Vice President Shuey.
Well, I appreciate getting more information. It's still predicated on the belief that, asking how kids feel, like Director Shu said, like, you can't ask. I think it's fair to assume, not just fair, but it is the truth that there are going to be people who are going to feel uncomfortable, and there are going to be kids. And so for us to be, in our positions of authority and leadership and say, well, let's go ask the people who are most impacted and let's go find out, they're not in a position to say it, and we should just know it. And three other things that I wanted to mention is that as far as the policy, I don't think that it is a field trip policy issue. I think it's a well-being of each and every child. And then that, and one other thing is the hiding of the religious symbols, I think is really problematic, because you are suggesting from a position of comfort, and not you in an individual you, but we, whoever it is that says that we can or they can hide the religious symbols, we know what's there. And so to suggest that we can make people more comfortable by covering it up is really inappropriate. And it is from the standpoint of somebody to whom those religious symbols are not injurious and impactful, because we know that they are, because of people's histories. And I do want, if I can have one more minute, please, is that there was the massacre at the synagogue shooting in at the Tree of Life a few years ago, where after the number of people were assassinated, Jewish people, they put up, or a person put up these Jewish stars in order to recognize what had happened to Jewish people. But behind and the support structure of the Jewish stars was a cross. And so, true that you could not see the cross from the front of the road, but people very quickly realized that the person who put them up was the Christian person who had put up these crosses around all the other shootings. And so was trying to be, quote unquote, sensitive to it being a synagogue, but to use crosses at, that, terrible of an event was impactful and injurious. And so it's the same thing. I think that if we say that we're going to cover them up, we all know they're there.
I'm going to suggest, in the interest of time, that we come back to this issue when we have more information. I'm asking Dr. Jarvis, would you be amenable to us, assuming there's unanimous consent by the board, having your update follow public comment, as we have several public commenters here, and the time is 5:10 p.m. Would you be amenable to having public comment before your update? Okay, I'm looking at the board directors. Do I have sort of just by looking at your heads, unanimous consent? I'm going to say, why don't we then skip now to public comment? We have people who I think expect us to start at 5, and we're at least close, but we can get to that. So with that, let's come back to this with more information coming, and we'll go to item 4. And thank you. If we can project the public comment guidelines, I will simply read a summary, but I ask everybody to please take a look at those public comment guidelines. This is the time during our meetings when we receive public comment, and the details about public comment and our expectations are on our agenda, and they're displayed now on the screen. We ask you to remember that you can also communicate with us as a board by email as well as by voicemail. We're grateful to receive public comment, and we appreciate the thoughtful input of our community. Because of our calendar, we limit the time to 20 minutes, and we limit each remark to 2 minutes. We listen to all of the comments carefully, but we generally don't respond here. We expect speakers to engage in a civil manner and not engage in any form of communication that's identified as unacceptable, which is fleshed out in the guidelines. But those include slander and libel, invasion of privacy, obscenities and harassment, intimidation, bullying, or discrimination. We also want you to know that we can't accept public comment on pending investigations involving student discipline, any allegations of employee misconduct, and any allegations of discrimination or harassment. For all of these, it's to preserve our ability to hear appeals. We thank you again and know that while we are listening to your comments intently, we generally do not comment in the setting. So with that, Ms. Worth, could you please introduce us or have the first speaker step up? Thank you.
Thank you. I have 5 people who have pre-registered for public comment. If you are online and wish to take one of our 5 remaining spots, please use the raise hand button. I think everyone in the room has already signed up to do public comment, but if you're in the room and haven't already signed up, please let me know. And so Christy Mintier is going to be our first speaker tonight.
Hello, I'm Christy Mintier, and I'm the Bellevue School District Executive Assistant assigned to support the Bellevue Schools Foundation. I'm here today to share an update on Spring for Schools. I want to start by thanking directors Serafon and Eris for attending on last Saturday evening. Spring for Schools is key to informing the district educators, along with a larger community, about all the wonderful projects funded by the foundation. After 32 years, the foundation changed the format to a Saturday evening specifically to allow educators to attend. 350 people registered to attend, and over 100 staff and students ran the education show booths to bring a glimpse into their foundation-funded projects. The foundation is so very grateful to all the district employees who attended. This is why the foundation recognized them as stars of the event with their own flashing star pin. District staff are so vital to the foundation's work as they are the key to the larger community's awareness when they help to spread the word about the need for community involvement. Currently, only 9% of families donate to the Bellevue Schools Foundation. Hopefully, that percentage will increase as awareness spreads. The continued investment in our students is only sustainable with community participation. These dollars directly impact the teacher's ability to provide the best possible learning opportunities to all students in Bellevue Public Schools. The foundation raised just over $400,000 during Spring for Schools, but they are still fundraising towards a $1.43 million goal for the year. They hope to raise another $500,000 by the end of August. The foundation hopes educators will continue to encourage families to check out the Bellevue Schools Foundation website, to view the videos, and to learn about the Bellevue Schools Foundation's funding's impact on Bellevue School District. Thank you so much.
All right. Hello. I would like to talk to you guys about AI. Recently, there has been the release of a model called ChatGPT and related models, GPT-3, GPT-4, offshoots of that, open source versions. And right now, we are at basically the bottom of an exponential curve where technological progress is going to go and society is going to change like that. Schools should probably be more prepared for that than they are right now, because ChatGPT is blocked. It's technically available to people about over 13 now, and I think it's a really valuable tool for education, for example, studying for AP tests. This is what I used it for, or summarizing articles, research papers. I know there are concerns about people using it to cheat or otherwise abuse the system, but I suspect it'll be similar to calculators, where they'll be available, but people won't use them because they're not useful on most problems, assuming they require actual thought and test students' knowledge. Yeah, I just like to see more development in this space from the district. While I'm here, AI doom might be coming because AI can self-improve. It's not very well aligned because we don't know exactly what we want from it right now. A bunch of compute and money is being thrown at it. This is a general societal issue which will impact all of society, including schools. You can't really do anything about it. Maybe more technical education is a good idea. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Teddy Andrews is our next speaker.
Hello, good evening. I'm here today because all of my other available communication methods have been obstructed by people in this room. I did want to make a short point about agenda item 2.2, which is clearly a violation of the separation of church and state and students' freedom from religion. And setting them up for segregation for some students is just not acceptable. That being said, I'll move on to what I came here to talk about tonight. Procedure 1400P, number 8, directed toward the agenda policy 2161 and the district operations and programs. Board members, under RCW 28A 330.01, the school board is responsible for managing and controlling the district schools, including ensuring compliance with the state and federal laws and regulations regarding special education programs and services. The board must also adopt and implement policies and procedures for the education of students with disabilities as required by RCW 28A 150-230 and the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, ensuring that students with disabilities receive a free and appropriate public education and are not neglected, segregated, obstructed, or otherwise discriminated against by any of the offices within the BSD. Tonight, we will be discussing the systemic issue of discrimination, inclusive of the children like my son who have language and other needs previously identified by the BSD. However, despite these legal requirements, my previous communication regarding the illicit conduct of individuals within the current offices of the BSD and the violations that have gone unacknowledged and constituent complaints subverted by this board. This is unacceptable and a violation of RCW 28A.330.010. Therefore, I am here today to insist that this board uphold its duties under the law and conduct a formal and proper investigation into the constituent communication.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Kelly Smith, please.
Hi, guys. I thought I'd let you all know how it's going outside the bubble. In executing 2 thriving elementary schools, Eastgate and Wilburton, you have lit the spark that will lay waste to the life of our surrounding communities. You have a concrete motive and preferred beneficiary and never intended to include community input that did not align with your universal priority of relocating your esteemed choice schools. You do not care how many children are disrupted in the process of securing your goal, and it shows. You have done only the bare minimum with the stakeholders to remain legally compliant, and you're proceeding with your agenda by asking for forgiveness instead of permission. You've gravely misled the stakeholders, selling your plan of school consolidations as an indisputable cost-saving measure when it was nothing more than a political scheme. Now you propose a full reconstruction of Eastgate to accommodate a middle and high school. And what will this cost? Did this cost savings agenda you peddled to the community, including stopping construction during a time of financial crisis? You profess that Bellevue School District is teetering on insolvency, but you are going to build out a secondary building on the fresh grave of Eastgate Elementary? Your autocratic manipulation of data and this entire process is shameful and certainly out of compliance. The community has produced extensive data that suggests your demographer's report is no more than anecdotal numbers crafted to suit your cause. The validity of Western Demographics' license to legally operate has been called into question, yet we are supposed to trust the data they produced and that you are placing your entire faith in? Come on. You need to know the community sees through the veil of positivity, popsicle parties, and transition teams. Now understands you're grave violators of your stewardship of our children and the $385 million dollars you're trusted to manage. Over the last 3 months, you've single-handedly caused unprecedented trauma and uncertainty to Bellevue families and our children's education. You have exhausted parents, crushed the spirits of hundreds of children. You've brought voters to question your financial discernment. You have succeeded in sparking wars between communities, division among cultural groups, and competition between educational centers. And you have put devoted educators on the firing line, awaiting their fate with their hands tied and mouths gagged in fear of displacement. You honor and thank Duwamish and Snoqualmie tribes in your land acknowledgement. Well, in the words of Chief Self, like a man who has been dying for many days, a man in your city is numb to the stench. And my friends, in this situation, you have lost your sense of smell and it stinks.
Thank you. Our next commenter is online, and Dr. Cho, I've clicked the buttons and we can see you on video, so please go ahead.
Thank you and good evening. I'm here today as a parent, educator, volunteer, and supporter of the Bellevue School District who wants to see transformative education for all our students. First, I commend you as a board for selecting an incoming superintendent that's demonstrated his commitment to equity through his actions and his leadership, having stepped up during a difficult time. Second, I want to thank the board for voting in favor of the consolidation. Despite many challenges, it was the most just outcome. And third, I ask you to please consider your actions, not your words, not performative statements, resolutions, or online postings, but your actions, and ask whether and how they align with your words. It's important there be a clear distinction between performative allyship and actual allyship. The latter is demonstrated through the treatment of others and often difficult actions that require you to give up your privilege. A commitment to equity requires that individuals not only are able to identify and recognize discrimination and oppression, but also take the steps to remove barriers for folks to not only have a seat at the table, but to eat at it too. Commitment to equity is not measured by how many times the word equity is stated in board meetings. We dilute and diminish what equity truly means when it's used as a catchphrase that can swallow and justify personal wishes. As you look ahead to make critical decisions, I ask you to consider the following things. 1, how can you make space for community members not currently represented on the board to be decision makers? 2, do you recognize the privileges you have and the way you've used them to your benefit? 3, do you consider that you might be a gatekeeper, preventing someone else from taking a path that you once took? And lastly, do you call inappropriate what you considered entirely appropriate for yourself? I ask you to consider these questions and work positively for this community that you were elected to serve. Ultimately, it's not your words that matter, but your actions. Allyship is a verb, and the most important thing you can do is demonstrate those commitments through your actions in the vision and mission of educational justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Worth, do we have any more commenters?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our public comment. I turn back to capture what was item 3, our superintendent update.
Thank you. We have one central item on the superintendent's update, and that is to look at our innovation initiatives in the school district. Our incoming superintendent, Dr. Aramaki, has asked to take the lead in this one because it ties in with some of the comments and discussion that will also take place later. So Dr. Aramaki.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm actually in a second going to turn it over to Kristen Tinder, who is our Director of Advanced Learning and Innovation. But before I do that, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the work of innovation in the Bellevue School District. I think as we're going through some challenging times right now with regards to enrollment and budget and finance and things like that, I'm encouraged as I look to the future for our district. I do think that we have the opportunity to really push towards excellence and towards innovation. And so we are, one of the things that we talked about in our Monday pre-planning meeting was some of the questions about the investments, about finances, and like, is this the right time, and how are we investing in things like innovation at this time? And what I'll say is, one of the most important things that we can do is continue to be the very, very best school district in the state, and to continue to strive to meet the needs of our students and our families here in Bellevue. And so that is what we're going to do. We are going to continue to be on the innovative end of education. We're going to continue to bring in programs that our students want, that our families are craving for their children. We want Bellevue to continue to be a place of great opportunity for our kids. And so I'm going to introduce Kristen Tinder. She's our Director of Advanced Learning and Innovation. It's new. We've always had a Director of Advanced Learning, but we've added this aspect of innovation, and it's proved to be an amazing intersection of thinking about innovative practices and looking at the giftedness of all of our students. The one thing I'll just mention before I turn it over to Kristen is the question about investment of our funds in innovation. One of the things that we're doing is we are always looking for grants and outside funding in order to seed innovation. So, for example, in the starting of our Arabic language program, which Kristen's going to talk about, we were able to receive about $150,000 from OSPI around heritage languages. And so that money is helping us to research programs, to build out curriculum and things like that. But we're also looking at partnerships with the Bellevue Schools Foundation, as was mentioned earlier, and building partnerships with local organizations, companies, in order to seed innovations. And so when we talk about innovating around robotics or aviation, those are all things that we're hoping to do in partnership with the many great organizations and companies that are here in our region. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristen, who's going to talk through she's going to give you a glimpse of some of the things and innovation that we're planning for here in Bellevue.
Thank you, Dr. Aramaki. We have a slideshow. Again, my name is Kristen Tinder, and I'm the Director of Advanced Learning and Innovation, here tonight to share with you some of our current and upcoming innovations that are happening within the school district. This is certainly not an exhaustive peek at all of the things that are happening, but it is features several projects that are going on currently. Next slide. We've got several things happening with the Heritage Language Project, new career and technical education programs, special education innovation, transitional kindergarten, and new summer programs. Next slide. Our mission and vision as a school district calls out each and every student through a rigorous and relevant education that's innovative and individualized. Innovation is called out specifically here in our mission, and we have an opportunity and a privilege to really look at what are those innovative programs that we can implement across the whole pre-K through 12 system. Next slide. Innovation in action. What is happening now? Next slide. We have a very large project called the Heritage Language Project that's happening pre-K to 12 that Dr. Aramaki referenced, a grant that we received recently from OSPI to develop a P through 12 heritage language strategy that elevates and affirms the many heritage languages present in our community. As part of this large project, many innovative programs are beginning and in the early planning stages, preschool to high school. You'll see on the slide pictures of a few of those programs, including the Somerset Kindergarten program, which kicked off this spring, the Arabic Elementary School program, which is beginning this fall up at Ardmore Elementary, the Heritage Language courses that are beginning for 6th through 12th graders this fall as well. Starting this spring, Somerset has really included a focus on elevating heritage languages through language and cultural study in 2-week units each through community and family partnerships, including Mandarin, Spanish, Japanese, Hindi, and Korean. And starting in the fall, the Arabic language program for elementary school students begins with kindergarten, first and second grade, and it will roll in subsequent years to be through grade 5. We currently have 126 program applicants that are interested in that program, and enrollment's happening now. The heritage language courses at all of the high schools and middle schools are available for 3 levels of Arabic, and enrollment again is happening now as students are signing up for their classes. So we're excited to add the Arabic at all of the high schools. We also have a Spanish heritage language program that's being added, and we're looking to add future languages in the fall of 2024 and again fall of 2025 as we scale up heritage language classes. Next slide. Future projects are the expansion of the elementary programs, much like the Somerset program, looking at early learning program opportunities and additional secondary courses, Hindi and Korean for 24-25. Next slide. Another really exciting and innovative work that's happening is within our career and technical education classes. In the middle school programmings, we've got medical detectives launching at Tillicum and Chinook this fall. Medical detectives is a class for 7th and 8th grade students to explore health science and scientific processes through project-based learning units. Students engage in CSI type investigations, analyzing DNA, exploring anatomy, and really encouraging that hands-on, minds-on science. This class also promotes our healthcare careers pathway at the high schools and encourages further student discovery through the healthcare career fields that are so prominent in this area as well. Flight in Space is another middle school program that's launching this fall at Highland Middle School. It is currently offered at other middle schools, but we're able to launch it at Highland through partnership with the current middle schools and the CTE department. So that's exciting for students to be able to sign up for that program. And that will take place at Odell, Tyee, and Highland in the future. High school programs in CTE are also launching. Next slide, please. We've got a launching into aviation course and an introduction to flight course that will be beginning in fall 2023. And that is part of our new and exciting engineering aviation program at Sammamish High School. It's a 4-year program, and we're launching it with the 9th grade classes next year. And the first classes begin and are supported by a grant from OSPI to support career-connected learning in this high-demand area. Industry partners that we work with include Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Boeing. And the course is using curriculum from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And the grant has been utilized so far to purchase the Red Bird simulators that you see in this image. It's a flight simulator that the student is using in that photo on the right. And this, the future goal is to build a 2-hour CTE satellite program for all students in the high school grade band. Other CTE programs include expansion of the Core Plus construction apprenticeship on the next slide. And we continue to expand the building industry technology programs at Interlake. In the fall, the program will include expanded apprenticeship programs and a new learning space, which has been supported from a grant from Claudia Balducci, the King County Council, Billy Hetherington, political leader for the Local 242, and Core Plus Construction. The students in the current program are building tiny homes and are working on starting their 4th home, which is the images that you see here. So we're excited to launch an expansion of this program, including those industry apprenticeship connections. Next slide. I'm really excited to talk about this partnership between CTE and special education. We have an incredible assistive technology group that is innovating every single day. And the innovative piece really is that the students are at the core of this innovation. The speech pathology team at Highland Middle School began collaborating together with the CTE department and the Engineering and Design for Good Club, which are the students that you see featured here in the photo. And the students designed and made 3D printed key guards for students using the augmentative and alternative communication devices, which are devices that help students communicate who are not able to use their speech. So you'll see the devices on the left. That is a student designed project from a real need that was happening in their middle school. And this is incredible innovation, designing and engineering for good. It was a way to get to yes for the many students, and the students see the power in their work and the delight in the students' eyes when they can use that. On the next slide, you'll see students actually using this technology. So these are students in our innovative assistive technology, really supporting the inclusion of students with complex physical communication needs. So this is eye gaze technology and implementation of a new district-wide writing software that supports all learnings. Students are also using those the keyboard pieces as well. So innovation doesn't necessarily always happen in a void. It's those departments coming together saying, what can we do to engineer for good? And what is that true problem solving piece? Next slide. Transitional kindergarten also began in January 2023 at Woodridge Elementary. And this is a new program that brings early childhood experiences to eligible children in the Bellevue School District. And it serves children who are not currently enrolled in preschool and don't have access to other high quality early learning experiences. These students are a joy to be around if you ever have a chance to visit the transitional kindergarten. The fact that we were able to implement the program early and get it going very quickly was exciting and is part of that innovation. We look forward to expanding that program. And our last slide talks about the summer programs that are new and launching this year as well to support our learners at all levels. We have an On the Way to K kindergarten, rising kindergarten program that's partnering with transitional kindergarten as a way to expand their learning throughout the summer with hands-on kindergarten preview units, as well as engaging in cooperative learning that extends and connects preschool experiences to kindergarten. Literacy and math program for our elementary grade students is continuing again with some new project-based learning curriculum within that typical program. We also have multilingual language support and social emotional learning that will be incorporated. A new Jumpstart program for rising sixth graders is being started this year that will focus on helping that transition to middle school. Students are participating in project-based learning and an introduction to design thinking. And then we have experiential learning for our middle school programs in an arts, tech, and more summer experience. And students will be engaging in STEM learning projects during these one-week exploration programs to enhance and enrich their learning. Next slide. Innovation often is about starting something and getting to that yes. And I think there are so many opportunities to get there. And we just have the ability to do that with these one moments sparkling in our hand like a snowflake. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. We have an amazing team working on innovation, Kristen being one, Chitra Bardwaj, who is our Director of Multilingual Learners, as well as Tom Dunwald and some others. I'll just close also by saying every Saturday I go to my parents' place to take care of my sister, Karen, who went through the Pacific program here in Bellevue. And she's nonverbal, but I think being a family member, having grown up with her, I could tell when she wants things because she'll look to the right and try to find me when she's thirsty or when she needs something. And so you can kind of tell what she wants by kind of the way she looks at you. She's very clear if she doesn't like the movie that's on, things like that. But the point in bringing that up is when we talk about innovation, it's not about like fluff or kind of decoration around core academics. We're talking about like life-changing education for kids. And so when you look at the innovation, I think Jeff is over there, with our head of special education. But when you look at innovation with assistive technology for students with disabilities, we're literally talking about helping kids who are nonverbal be creators of their future world. Like we're giving them the opportunity to communicate in ways that their families would only dream about. And so innovation, I think it plays a central role in us moving forward in the field of education. I'll also say innovation is culturally affirming. And so when you look at like the Arabic program, or when we bring Hindi into the system and Korean, it's not just about adding more world languages for kids to enjoy, which they will enjoy, but we're talking about bringing in like student language and culture into our system so that their families are seen and their cultures are affirmed. And then the last thing I'll say is around innovation, it's not us as adults making up this stuff. This is what kids are asking for. So it is very student-centered innovation. And the example I'll give around that is just thinking about all of our robotics teams, the 5 of the 6 teams who are heading over to Eastern Washington right now to compete in districts, and then hopefully heading to Houston in a couple of weeks in order to compete. But the kids are basically saying, this is what we want. Our kids who are in doing rocketry are hundreds and hundreds of kids in every high school who are working on robotics. They're basically saying, this is what we want, and we want the adults to get organized and support the work that we want to do. And so you're going to be hearing more about some of the ideas around supporting our kids with aviation, rocketry, and robotics. They're asking for more support in order to elevate their interest in those things. They're making the case about the implications for their careers and living out their passions. And we want Bellevue to be a place where we basically take the dreams that kids and families have and bring them to fruition here in the district. So that's the last thing I'll just add around the area of innovation, but we're very excited. We do feel like innovation is the future of our district and is going to be a signature of the work that we do over the next 10 years.
President Serafan, as we have been cut, I'm trying to stay within the time frame, so I'd be happy to take questions that we can then get information back to the board.
Okay, I see Director Aris's hand up, and I just want to share with the board kind of where we are on time. So just like, let's just take a minute here and maybe rethink what we're going to do tonight. We have working backwards because of our study session and a break requested to ensure that we have a break between now and our study session. We basically have 40 minutes left. I'm going to just sort of make a suggestion on what we could do. I think I'd like to prioritize discussion or questions, but we need to figure out how to do it. I think 6.1, the resolution, is something that I think many of us came prepared to discuss tonight, so I'd like to keep that. I suggest we consider taking what is under items 5.1, 2, and 3, for which we had already narrowed it down to 10 minutes. I've connected with Executive Director Harrison and asked him if we could carry that over to the next meeting. So let's move that to April 20th. And then that allows us to focus our time. But I'm looking to you guys. Would you like to have some discussion now on the innovation report? I know we had some already on Monday, but would you like us to use our time there and then shift to the resolution? Do you instead want to kind of limit that innovation discussion, go to the resolution and just have open time at the end? I won't be able to create new time, but I can only ask us how we're going to use what we've got. So let me hear from you on time, and then I think Director Aris has a specific question.
My questions on this innovation will take like less than a minute. So I don't know that we need a ton. I don't know what other people need, but I don't need a lot of time.
Okay, so if we allocate, let's say 5 minutes total to questions on this, then like if we do that, I think then we can, I'll just try to keep everybody on that, then we can move and then go to the resolution and then hope still have some time for director discussion. Am I seeing agreement on that? Nods? Okay, all right, so Director Aris, please go ahead.
I actually don't have a whole lot of questions, but I wanted to make a comment. I want to say thank you for pushing forward on the innovation space and keeping our students at the center of all of this, as well as making sure that we're being responsible by fiscally by reaching and looking into all the other possible grants to fund this and making sure that we continue to move forward. In that sense, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Director Chu?
Yeah, I'll echo that thanks and just say wonderful presentation, like really well organized and lots of good things going on and exciting. I have a couple of questions I'd like to learn more about over time. I didn't see much about online learning, and we have invested in that, and I'd like to understand where that's going to land with the district in terms of priorities of innovation. Second, I really appreciated the inclusiveness and the student drive behind a lot of these innovations. One of the things I'd like to have more visibility into, not just as a board member, but hopefully our community can also have more visibility, is how we are truly inclusive, not only in the projects, but in the designs of the projects. So in particular, when you were showing us the middle school project about the students who were designing things so that students who have speech challenges, that they can use these devices, I'd love to know how those students who would be consuming those devices were informing and were actively celebrated as co-designers in the work. And I want to make sure that we are very visible about how we are inclusive. Same thing with our heritage language programs. There are not, like, language extends into culture and a lot of other things. And so being very explicit and being very clear about how our families and students are involved in defining those experiences along with our staff and other district experts would be super helpful. So I'd love to learn more about it. But like I said, if inclusion is our mantra, then I'd like to see us lead with it when we communicate so everyone sees that and is part of, and it's just part of how we operate. And then finally, I didn't hear a lot about space. And I know that space isn't necessarily innovative, but not outer space, but space for things like all the technical innovative projects like rocketry and robotics and all those things that our kids are doing. I think that there are some innovative ideas floating around or about space there. So I'd like to see documentation and clarity around what our intentions there are and what our opportunities for co-design from the community.
Thank you. I don't know if I see a hand up. I'm going to go ahead and say Director Watson, go ahead, and then we'll go to Vice President.
Okay, I have some questions that are very similar to the ones I think I asked on Monday. So I'd like to know if the secondary language heritage teachers are live teachers, or at some point I thought it might have been online. So I wanted to know if they're real people. And then I'm always worried, can kids get into CTE classes? Will we be ramping up some of the capacity, because some of these things are very exciting opportunities. So can kids get into them? And then of course, I'm always worried about funding. So did we get a grant for transitional kindergarten, or how, that's a year before kindergarten. How do we fund that? And then do we have funding for the summer programs, or is it tuition based, or did we get a grant, or how are we swinging that? And those are my questions.
Okay, Vice President Shui, and then I'll go last. Go ahead.
I just will say thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I will say thank you. I will also just ask, I think this touches a bit on what Director Chu was saying, but we hear again and again across different teams like robotics. I think that's where it shows up the most, but it's different depending on what school you're in. And so how that will be folded in to make this, I would feel equitable at the school level. What are the plans there? I think you've started, I know you've started to think about it, but just how that will roll out. And one piece I think on the funding is just how can we ensure at a time when we are so aware of our funding limitations that we're hitting all the possible contributors from the private sector. I shared an idea about one, but I know that there's more. So that's more of something to please think about, because I think across all these topics, I can think of funders who may be excited to contribute beyond who you've got. So thank you. I think we will now move. I want to ask our board directors, are you amenable to moving what is under item 5 to the April 20th meeting? The purpose is, I'll say this, we don't have that much time allotted to it. So I think having had a pretty good discussion on Monday on 2161 and 5515, this allows, frankly, Executive Director Harrison to do some of the absorption of that input and come back to us before the meeting on the 17th, and allows us tonight to not run out of time and to give good focus to item 6, which is the resolution that's been drafted. So are we good with that, or does anyone have a concern? Okay, I'm seeing nods. I think I got a nod earlier from Director Chu. Well, if we want to do it, then we won't have time for director discussion. So that, I mean, just looking at the time. Okay, so Director Aris, did I read you right or not? It's item 5.
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to shoo
Okay,
someone away.
It's a question of time. We have to stop at 6:20 to be able to have time before our study session tonight. And we have a break built in. So the point is, time use has to go somewhere. And I'm suggesting we use it towards the resolution and the balance toward director discussion, rather than spending time on 5, which I suggest we carry over to the meeting on the 20th. I think we have 4.
My one question regarding if we were to move it to next meeting, would this put us, I guess, put staff behind on as far as being able to put things in place with the adjustment of the policy, just making sure that the students will have or
Yeah,
based on the policy next year?
I asked Executive Director Harrison. He said he thought it would work okay because 5.2 is a pre-reading. It was not even a first reading. So I thought I understood him to say it would not throw things off. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, I can't hear him.
I just said it does push everything out by one meeting, but I still think the key policies will be able to get completed before the end of the school year, because I built in a little bit of wiggle room in the schedule. And then I think the advantage of it is that it does create more opportunity for Director Jorgensen and myself to conduct the engagement process that we told you about on Monday.
Okay, and in that case, I'm fine. As long as we're not
Okay.
delaying the impact of the policy on our students for next year.
Okay, so we go to item 6. We have the resolution. I'm going to ask Ms. Worth to work with Jess to project it, and maybe for either Director Chu or Director Aris to walk us through it. I mentioned Director Chu that I put comments in and track changes, as well as some edits. And I know that others have, I think, either looked at it by now or given some comments at different stages.
One funny little sentence that looks like.
Yeah, I think there's a font formatting issue there. So we can fix that.
I did not worry too much about formatting, meaning like I did notice some of the fonts were at different places, but I thought the goal was maybe to see if we could arrive at consensus on the actual substance. But
Yeah, so to reintroduce our resolution that we've been discussing, the purpose of this is really to get us all focused and clearly committed to the safety and well-being of our students, staff, and school community. The policy that we didn't discuss tonight on staff well-being, I was okay with the kind of, letting that go, because I know that the efforts that is kind of trying to promote and support are not going to slow down at all. So that's a good thing. And we have a lot of things underway. So the purpose of this resolution is to sort of commit to it, to lean into it, and to kind of double down, because our students and families and teachers and staff have a right to be as safe as we can possibly make them, and for their well-being to be taken care of. What you'll see in the markup here is Dr. Aramaki and some of the leadership team had some discussions, and there were a couple of members, I believe, Deputy Superintendent DeVita and Director James from Safety went through and made some edits on behalf of the leadership staff to recommend here. I left those in as markups so that you could see them, the changes from last time. That's it. And Seema, I see you just had some style wording changes, and that's fine. I think it makes things more clear, and that seems fine. So
Yeah, I tried not to change, the general spirit of it. There was a few places where I thought, some wording changes might be more consistent or better, but overall, I primarily focused on the actual sort of actions to be taken. So, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and you can see it in track changes.
yeah, so how would you like to go through it? This had a long history. Director Shui and I talked about this, I think, a year ago or something, doing something to really highlight our commitment across safety and well-being, and things were happening so rapidly, and that didn't happen. And then Director Aris and I, at some point, had that discussion that we were thinking about that in public, that we were thinking about doing that. And so the two of us just went and kind of got started, and now we've iterated on it a couple times. So I think it's time to kind of put the pedal to the metal and get it done. So our incoming superintendent has been part of the conversation, our staff have been, and our board has had a chance to discuss. How do you want to go through it tonight to be efficient, but not overly efficient? Like, do you want to go through section by section, or do you want to just give each director a chance to raise some questions, thoughts, and ideas?
I think we can do it any way that makes sense. I mean, I think I'm making an assumption. We've all read it. We see within it various things that we've given feedback on over time, and I think we could give our thoughts about it individually or invite others to have a conversation. I'm glad that in the context of wellness, we have a variety of topics, including, the physical safety in our buildings, commitment regarding basically our districts standing up against firearms, and sort of mental health as well as community engagement. And I think it's time. What I see projected here, though, I will say, is does not reflect the edits I had made earlier. So I'm looking at what was attached to our agenda.
I think if you look at, forget the PDF, because I don't think the PDF that was published shows the markups and everything. But I think that Ms. Worth has emailed us a link to the live Word doc.
Yeah, if I use the live one, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's also
that's
what
what's
she's
getting
projecting
projected.
right now.
Yeah, so I'll do that. So it's not what's attached to our agenda, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if others want to comment on it. I mean, I think as I looked at it today in its form, I thought we could continue to iterate on it. We could make it shorter. We could make it more punchy. There are ways that I think we could probably arrive at something that I would say would be better.
Yep.
But I think it's a question for us how I want to use the word agile, but how fast do we want to go on this? And I think I'm comfortable supporting it because I think it's good. I think it's strong. And in terms of the kinds of sort of back and forth we had before, I feel like it has the right spirit and it's the right point in time. So I'm supportive of it. I could also spend more time. We could spend more time as a board and get it shorter, better, more of a model. But I'm not 100% sure that is the right trade-off. So I'm happy to have that discussion now. Would like to know what others think too.
Yeah, I think that we should just hear from everyone, and then we can, if we need to go line by line or something, I agree with you. It could certainly be shorter. But one of the things I appreciate about it is actually the fact that staff went in and added things that they felt
100%,
were
yeah.
missing. And one of the things that I will say that I think is really important, you alluded to both physical and mental health and well-being. One of the things that we chose to leave in, and after I talked to Dr. Aramaki, is it is really important that we acknowledge that engagement, while it is exceptionally important, can also be a tax on the mental health and well-being of our stakeholders. And for that reason, we have to acknowledge that when we are engaging, we have to be as productive as we possibly can with those engagements. And otherwise, we are asking people to relive traumas, to give their time over and over for the same, to provide the same comments, and not see progress and not feel engaged. So we talked about whether or not that set a positive tone, but I think we left it in because it's just so critical to understanding as we increase engagement, mental health is important, and so we have to make that engagement count and be meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I actually was pausing on that sentence where you had one topic and I was starting to edit it. But I agree. That's one of the most common things we hear when we gather people. I've been here before. I told you this 3 meetings ago, and you don't have anything that you've done on it. So why are you bringing me back to tell you the same thing? So I went back and I made slight edits, but I left the one topic to have me come back and talk about that same topic. So I thought that was worth leaving in. I'm looking to see if anyone's hand is up. But Director Watson, would you like to?
Well, I guess my comment would be, in order to understand this, what I like to do is just kind of outline. I mean, I agree with the whereases, but then what are we actually resolving here? So if you just indulge me for a second, and it's okay. We're resolving that there'll be an advisory group, a new policy on well-being. Will advocate with at the state and federal level for for staff, for safe buildings, for training. We'll ask that relationships be developed with partners, which include first responders, community groups, and government agencies. We'll use the critical criteria. We'll have dialogues with the superintendent about safety and well-being, and we will support district investments in counselors, staff's well-being, building design, training, emergency response, and other threats like cyber that may evolve. So that's my summary. And given that summary, I can agree with it. But I just found that little exercise kind of helpful for me.
Jess, can you scroll to the place where it says, therefore be it resolved? Because I think that will be helpful.
And then the other thing other comment I have is I like the way there's just sort of a little bit of a nod to earthquake preparedness in there, which has always been my thing.
You can thank the staff for remembering that one, Melissa and Doug. Anyone online have comments? Oh, I think Director Shuey's hand is up.
Vice President Shuey?
Thanks. A couple of things that overall, I support it. I said that on Monday too. As each time you look at it, you see different things. And one of my thoughts is that when we have it so striking, and I think because looking at it with the shall, in resolutions that I've been a part of, we've typically said this is, our position, and it is not necessarily a directive, but just what our position is on different items. And so I am a little concerned about adding to the operational burden when really I think our point is agreeing as a board on what our priorities and our position are. So that's one piece of feedback. And then if you can scroll, let me see which direction it is. There's a reference to people of color on page numbers. Let me see, page 2. Maybe just do a search for people of color. Maybe that will. Yeah, so right there, thank you. so we have here that community trust in law enforcement for people of color has eroded, which is certainly true. I don't know if it has eroded or if it's always always been, and so that's just a, you know, I don't want to suggest that that's something new. That feels a little bit from the perspective of white people who now recognize, but for people of color, I think we've always recognized that that it's really fraught. And so I ask us to consider changing those words to something that is more about that it is fraught at the very least, not that it has eroded. And then my other comment about this section is that there are also disparate impacts on children with special needs and like staff with kids with special needs, because there is a disparate and disproportionate impact on children with disabilities and children with special needs. And so wanted to consider adding something here so that it's clear that it is that the impact is not just to students and staff of color.
Joyce, that would be great. I think that this was rewritten, this section here was rewritten by staff in an effort to make it less narrow and to be more like comprehensive on this area. So if you have an edit or two that you would suggest, like, I don't know if you're able to type it in or if you could just say it, I'll type it in.
Sure. Why don't, if you don't mind, just so that we don't waste time here, why don't I type, it's showing up, and maybe the next person can give their comments. Thank you.
Great. Director Ars, we haven't heard from.
I wanted to say one thing on an edit before we go there. There's one area where I debated putting an edit in, but I wanted to just mention, I decided not to write it in, but on I think I made it section A, superintendent shall. Section 1, it says the advisory group will comply with policy 4110. And I wondered if it might be just to have a better tone if we just said would be guided by, because comply sort of suggests they might not comply. And sort of we presume our advisory group will be directed by a superintendent, so they're not gonna, so I will, if that's good, I'll just modify that language. And then let's hear from Director Aris.
About that. No, I was just reading through. I appreciate Director Shui pointing out the language on the that she's working on right now. I do think it's not. I was trying to think of other verbiage that could be utilized versus what is currently been suggested by staff. It's mentally, I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what are other possibilities, because I think we need to change that a bit. Otherwise, overall, I appreciate all the different suggestions that was brought from staff and everyone. So and yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
Thanks, Director Ars. I know that you were part of the authoring of this, so I didn't figure you'd have a ton, but I know you've been on the road and didn't get a chance to see the staff edits until now. So yeah, thank you. And I think what we have right now is we're just pausing for a moment because two of our directors are going to make some quick edits, and then we're going to look at them to make sure that we're on the same page. While we're waiting, I don't know, is there anything from Dr. Aramaki or Dr. Jarvis on this to add? Go for it. I think Seema's typing, so.
I would just say thank you for the opportunity. I do want to pick up on what I think Director Shui put her finger on. I, I believe this started out to try to be a consolidation of what's the board thinking, what's the board position. And I would just suggest being very careful because it seems to trip over into both directives and procedures and staff. And so the question then comes up is, where does this fit in terms of a policy, in terms of a procedure, in terms of any of the pieces? So I'm not trying to pick at it as much as to say, I think the more you can take it back to the board position, the less problem you're going to have with trying to figure out where does this fit in relation to either the task that a staff member has or a procedure that's adopted by the district, or even following your own policies and avoiding conflict. So I think that's the extent of what I would say at this point. Is I appreciate Director Shui's point on that one, because I think that's a very sensitive one in the midst of what's the resolution really for. So thank you.
Yeah, when Director Chu and I talked about it, we did talk through that because we were saying, when we're looking at reporting and it's important that we look to policy and procedure in order to make sure that we're all organized and that we're doing exactly what we need to do. We don't want to have to follow or look back at all of the resolutions. And that said, I think one of the things that we talked about was, I think, following this resolution, because it seems like it has quite a bit of support from board members. And I think student safety and well-being is top of mind for people. My only ask will be that we follow up with the policy and procedure around student well-being and safety that will then encompass a lot of the things that are in here. So that would be my ask, so that we can then go back to policy procedure as we look at student well-being and safety.
Yeah,
So I'm also, sorry, go ahead.
So what we kind of concluded was, whatever is in here shouldn't be so prescriptive that not only do we have to look to our policies and procedures to know how to run the district, but that we have to look to resolutions, that the resolution can kick something off, but the maintenance of it, the ongoing structures need to be covered by policies and procedures. And so that's kind of the guideline that we used. And yeah, and there are things that get into like that we will support the district's current investments, and we will support partnerships. But I think as a board, sometimes it's forgotten that part of our job is also to help support those partnerships with civic organizations. And so we could codify that in policy as well, but I think like committing to being part of those relationships is an important commitment.
So I'll say, Dr. Jarvis, I hear you, and I hear I think the caution is a good one. I think it came up when we were talking about the well-being policy that I think had been framed as well-being, but was really kind of coming in as kind of the classroom climate was the proposal policy. We were talking about, well, there's actually more goodness in this resolution than there is in the proposed policy. So I agree, we need to go to policies and make sure those are the things that are actually instructive. But I will say, although I'm generally a little bit disinclined to have too much in a resolution, I will just say that over the years, we've had kind of disparate things that have been discussed and been in strong agreement from various board directors, and they have not come under an umbrella that we pulled together as a board. So earthquake preparedness was something, physical safety of our buildings, and there was a lot of work done by people in this room to make our buildings more safe, and that work continues. But and then mental health and on, and all these things, mental health of students, and now we hear and are more increasingly aware of how much we need to do for our teachers as well. And then to Director Chu's point, who are we going to bring in to have those discussions? So I think there is a place to say, all right, it won't be so prescriptive that the policy is not the first place you go to, but there is essentially a strong statement of this moment in time, we're pulling them all together and saying they're interrelated, that a student can feel safe because they're physically safe, because they're psychologically safe, because their mental health has been attended to, because the mental health of their teacher has been attended to. And then to bring it all together is what I see directors Aris and Chu doing in the resolution. So that's why I was and remain supportive of it. So, but I hear you. I think the risk is that it's too big, but I feel like that may be a risk that we accept here. So,
Well, that's
Director,
why I had to outline it to wrap my mind around it, but yeah.
Thanks for the flexibility on that. So I think that Director Shui, oh, are you still editing? Sorry. I was gonna have you
No,
present.
no,
Oh, we'll give
I
you a
think
sec.
that I'm good, at least for an initial, yeah, to initially take a look at it. It's hard because there's so many different colors and edits at this point, but
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Do you want to read it to folks or just scroll to it
Sure.
and have everyone take a look?
well, it's sort of hard, so I'll fix it if it's missing anything. But on a national level, statistics regarding law enforcement actions reflect disproportionate adverse impact on some demographics. For example, people of color and people with special needs. As a result, and so wanting to add in that it's not just people of color, and then having it be a for example, because there are certainly lots of demographics. As a result, trust in law enforcement and related mental health are at varied levels within the community, acknowledging the varied levels. We acknowledge that there should be a there, presence of police officers in schools can have a negative impact on some students and staff, especially among those historically the most adversely impacted. Or we don't need that last phrase, I suppose. Thank you for putting in I think that, yeah, thanks.
okay, I'm sorry to be the timekeeper, but I have to be the timekeeper. It's 6:16. We're supposed to be stopping at 6:20. We have essentially two things that I believe we have to vote on tonight. We don't have to vote on the resolution, but I believe there's a desire to do that. So we have that. We also have item 2.2. 2.7 has been carried over, but 2.2, we may be hearing soon from Dr. Aramaki on an update. And so I point that out and just want to first ask, board directors, do you feel that you are at a place where you can vote on the resolution as it is in its current state? Do you feel that you have what you need? I think I see a hand up and I just want to make sure I know whose it is. Sorry, just jump in because I don't think I can see
Yeah,
it.
I just wanted to make sure at the end of both the Word document and the PDF, there are some hashtags and articles. Is that just sort of for reference, or is it supposed to be part of the resolution? And the reason I ask is because if it's supposed to be part of the resolution, which I would be inclined not to put it in because there's a lot of other, okay.
No, it was literally for reference. We can clean those out. It's
Okay,
not a
yeah,
comprehensive
otherwise,
bibliography.
there are references to support the disproportionate impact, but if it's not there, then I withdraw making that comment. Thanks.
Okay, so
I'm going to motion that we approve the resolution as edited tonight in this Word doc. And we'll clean it up for grammar. I believe that we can, and with grammar cleanups as needed and formatting cleanup.
can I make a suggestion?
So
It's in track changes. Do we want to do you want to consider accepting those changes or resaving and accepting, or I just want to make sure if everybody's good with it. I mean, I can read track changes and I'm fine with it. If there's no complaint on that, I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same version, essentially.
The one thing that I am still struggling a bit with is the shall and the directive and what we've been hearing. So is there any way to?
I will just say I changed it from what it was. It said that our school board will, because if it's a resolution, by definition, it is we speaking. So generally, if it's a resolution, we are by definition resolving something. So we're either saying that the superintendent will do something, and that's section A. And then in section B, we're saying we and the superintendent will do something. So I'm making that distinction. If
Okay,
somebody
would-
wants a different word than shall, we could say
Would
may,
direct-
but then it's optional.
Would directors Chu and Aris be amenable to saying something like, it's, our reasoned resolution and judgment that these things would be useful to implement. So it's not a directive, but it shows our unanimity behind them.
I think I would rather say that we shall do it because I want to commit to it. And since the superintendent has already agreed to do it, and since it's no longer being set up as a directive to just say that we shall. But the other thing that I'm going to withdraw my motion for a moment because items 2 and 3 are, I think those belong under the board and superintendent shall, like the board writes policies. So the board is the one who has to pass a comprehensive student and well-being policy. And so I see that those are put under this first section, but I would move them to the second section.
Okay.
So
Can
I will.
you put them online so that we can
Yeah,
see
I
it?
can do it. I'll do it right now. I just wanted to see if there was any feedback before I did it.
You're talking about A2. I agree with you.
2,
That's
3,
better.
4. 2, 3, and 4.
You
They're both board and
allocate funding to
superintendent.
support, continue to advocate for yeah, but we do that in partnership with the superintendent. So yes, you would be moving that to the joint.
Yeah, and then it will go. Wait a second.
And then, so did I hear Superintendents Jarvis and Aramaki say that is that works from the district staff perspective?
Yeah, that's related to the comment that I made earlier about as long as we move this into the procedure so that it's not just in a resolution. That would be my preference, is that we put these types of things in our procedures and things like that. So at this point, I think it's fine. I'm fine with the superintendent shall. We've started a number of these things already anyways, and so we're very supportive of the content behind the work of student well-being and safety.
What I hear from Vice President Shuey is just the tone isn't right. Like maybe it's better if it's just that we resolve as a board that these things are really important, rather than going beyond that. But I think that's what I hear across what Dr. Jarvis says and what Vice President Shuey says. I don't know, like it may be that you're going to use it the same way, so it almost doesn't matter. So I'm happy to have something where everybody feels like the tone is something positive, especially if it gets us a unanimous rather than a non-unanimous sort of
I asked
outcome.
how Superintendent Aramaki and Jarvis felt about it, but I'm prepared to. I support it. I appreciate it, and so as long as there isn't a concern that this is, and maybe in the future we consider that more, so that if we want to have it be written more as a, we believe that this kind of policy should be implemented, and so that it's not putting a directive in a resolution. I'm prepared.
One idea is we can say will commit. I mean, will commit is different has a different tone than shall. I think. Curious. I'm just trying to read the folks here. I mean,
That's fine if
Okay.
if Joyce, does that actually make it feel better or not really? If it does, let's do it.
Yeah, I think it does make it feel a little bit better, but it seems weird because we can't, like, the resolution is ours, so we can't really say we will commit and still pseudo bind the superintendent. But as long as the superintendents are fine with it, I'm fine with it.
I'll make one other suggestion. What about the board shall support the superintendent to create a?
Yeah, I love that.
Great. I'll just type that in. Hang on one sec.
Thank you.
Board.
Are you going to go into the be it resolved that or?
Therefore, be it resolved that A, the board will support the superintendent to, and then we'll have the second bullet that you set up, which is the board and the superintendent shall. And and then we'll fix the numbering on these, but I don't want to try to do it now. I think it's a waste of time right here. And so there will be 7 items under the board and superintendent shall. Okay. Joyce, did that capture it or not quite?
Yeah, I think that that's fine. It's a little bit awkward then to say that we support them too, and then superintendent shall. So maybe if we say so support the superintendent to, and then just go straight into create blah, blah, blah. And
That's what it says. That's what I did.
it does. But I see the board superintendent shall still, maybe it's just my version.
Oh, wait. Okay, so on the second one, you want to change it? On B?
Yeah, I was thinking that both, that, yeah, so A is good, and then B, same thing, the board will support, you know, a joint effort with the superintendent too, something like that. Does that make sense?
What if the board will collaborate with the superintendent to?
Yep, perfect. Does Superintendents Jarvis and Aramaki, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that works for me. Thank you for asking.
I heard both of them saying they were good, so in case you missed that.
Yes, thank you for amplifying, because as I know most of you know, we online can't hear the room.
Thanks for pressing on these. I think that sometimes it does just take some collaborative edit time. Can't do the whole doc that way, but you can certainly fix a doc. All right, I'm gonna motion. Oh, sorry, we have.
Just one quick comment. I would just say part of what we're wrestling here is that the board will continue to wrestle with governance and how to work with the superintendent best. And I think the good faith is how you move forward now and try to make it work.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jarvis. So I'm going to motion that we approve the resolution as edited tonight with some grammatic and formatting cleanups to be done.
Second.
I think we've had discussion, so I'm going to say, is there any discussion? But I'm going to hope the answer is no. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the resolution unanimously passes. Great. Okay, so, okay, that was great. So I'm going to go to item 2.2 and ask Dr. Aramaki if there's anything he can share with us. If the answer is no, I'm going to say, let's take our break and then do other stuff. And if we need to come back, let me know.
Sure. So I wasn't able to get in touch with the school staff, but I did get in touch with Jeff Lowell, our director of activities and athletics, and he said it is early enough for them to go back and look if that's what we want them to do. So if they should have an opportunity to look for an alternate if that's what we're asking them to do. So timing wise, that would be okay. If that's the concern is timing, it doesn't really get to, I think, Vice President Shuey's concern just about the location in general, as well as yours, Director Watson. So, but timing wise, if we don't approve it tonight, we will be able to send it back to them and have them look for an alternate location.
If they didn't find an alternate location, would they lose this location? Like, how much time do they have left to solidify or keep the reservation on this one?
Yeah, I think they're going to lose this location if we don't approve it tonight. So Black Lake it won't be an option for them. But I'm guessing that if we send it back to them, we're telling them that Black Lake isn't an option for them anyway. So
What I wonder is, by not voting this, we can essentially hold this in abeyance and give more time. If I guess on some level, I'm wondering,
they'll lose
is there a desire to? Yeah, is there enough information for board directors to vote on item 2.2 right now? Is there any desire to get a broader understanding of what all the options are and come back to it?
I just want to be clear that if we don't vote tonight, what I just heard Dr. Aramaki say,
we will lose that spot.
We'll vote. We did vote. And we
Yeah.
voted, like, by default, we voted to lose that spot. So
Correct.
they
but
will
we've
lose
actually
that
not
spot if we
voted
don't
yet.
approve it
We've
tonight.
not
That-
actually voted, but
Right.
we pulled
But
it
if we
out of the
don't-
consent agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, but if we don't vote, I understand that that is the outcome.
Agreed. Agreed. Dr. Jarvis.
I would suggest that if the board felt so inclined to approve the school to use a camp, but to explore an alternative, but give them permission if in fact there is no alternative. So and then put that back in the administrative hands in the camp, and we can try to do our best, but that would give permission for the school to plan the camp.
Okay, I don't know if there's a board director who wishes to make a motion.
Because they still have to decide like today. Yeah.
So we could make a motion that I think is what, I just want to make sure I understand what the option here is. We could make a motion right now that we approve the trip with further consideration of the camp. And then we could decide to further qualify that and say that should no appropriate alternative be found in a timely fashion, we would approve the use of the camp as proposed. So we have like two levels of approval, I think, that we could provide here and make both of them somewhat conditional to say, maybe please take another look. And the question would be, how insistent are we that they come up with something else? Like, are we open to them using this facility that they have researched, that they have done diligence on, that they do have a plan for? Are we open to that? Or do we just feel like the risk is too high? In my opinion, I feel like we've given guidance, but we've never codified it in a policy. And while inclusion is pretty much top of mind for me, I'm concerned that cutting off students from a field trip at the last minute isn't terribly productive. But, sometimes there is pain involved in changing the way we do things. I just think we have an opportunity to make that change with a policy fix. And so I don't feel like we'll keep encountering it over and over again if we commit to that.
I'm the one who brought this up, and I really wanted us to have this discussion, which we have had before, and I'm glad we had it. But I walked in here tonight saying, I'm not going to vote against 400 kids having their trip. But it really bothers me that I'm in that position, because it was the same thing a year or two ago when it came up. Oh, we don't have time, so you have to, or the kids are going to lose out. But anyway, so that's where I stand. If you
Is there a motion?
Yeah.
I'm just going to push you guys. Is there a motion? Because we are,
I'll make a motion and then we can discuss if we need to.
okay, because
my
we're
motion
going to run
is-
out of breaks in time.
My motion is that we approve the trip, but ask for a reconsideration of the location. If an alternate location cannot be secured, we approve the use of the proposed location as long as due diligence is done to make the environment as inclusive as possible.
Okay, I would second your motion with only one modification. Instead of question, it's a directive to find an alternative, right? Because I think you had a request. We approve it with a request, and I wondered if it'd be better to say with a directive to find an alternative, and then everything else is as you had it. Agreed. So I second that. I see Vice President Shuey's hand is up. Go ahead. This is part of our discussion, and then we will need to just vote, I think.
Yeah, and again, when we say things like we don't want to hold this up for 400 kids, which kids? Because you're still talking, we are still talking, whoever else is saying it, and there's many of us, that these kids deserve to have a field trip. But, that is at the expense of some kids. You could also find activities to do that would include all of the kids. It doesn't have to be a camp. I think we're looking at this in a way that, oh, these poor kids, which ones are going to be to have something taken away from them? But think about which kids we're taking away from to give to which other kids.
Okay, I think your point is noted. I'm going to suggest.
Call the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'll
Agree,
go back
agree.
to my main comment. I would have liked more time initially. So I feel like this was a tricky spot to put us in. Just, I don't know how this kind of timing came up, but sometimes these things happen, and here we are. I think the motion Director Chu made seems reasonable. It's been seconded. I say we go ahead and vote. And I say that knowing we also have a lot to do tonight. So Director Chu.
For discussion of this, I would just say that my vote is really tied to us committing to a policy. So I almost wonder if the motion should include that we will put this on our policy list.
Well, we have already, I hear you, but we've already, I think with unanimous consent, we essentially asked Executive Director Harrison to add it to the rolling list we have. And what we're going to hear back from him is when will, it's 2320, when will it get added in his proposal, both that and the procedure. And if we disagree when we come back on the 17th and he offers that, we can say, no, move it up to the very top. So I don't believe it's appropriate to put it in the motion, my 2 cents, because
I'll
I
leave
think
it
this is
out.
about
That's
the
fine.
agenda item there. Okay. Motion as made by Director Chu, modified by me. Is there any desire to sorry. It was seconded by me with the modification. Are you seeking to make a new motion based on what you said?
No, I'll just
Okay.
accept the motion.
Okay, got
The
it.
motion is what was amended.
Okay. Then, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Vice President Shuey, I didn't know if you
Aye.
voted and if I didn't hear you.
Would give me an opportunity to ask who's voting nay.
Okay, all right, so I hear 4 ayes, 1 nay. Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, understanding that my vote is, there's 325 kids, a good portion of them will not be included. And so for that reason, nay.
Thank you. I think this was a tough one, and I'll just say when we can have more lead time, that would be appreciated. Okay, so we have to recess. We have a 20-minute recess, then we have a study session. So we are,
So are we skipping board discussion?
I don't see how we can do it, and then that's what I was trying to flag earlier. I don't have a way to do it otherwise. Okay, I'm just gonna say, y'all got to tell me what you want to do, because what we have on the back end is a study session.
Yeah, I'm in favor of
I'm just-
just being as close to time as we are. We had a
Okay.
lot of discussion, a lot of really good discussion today. So I'd be in favor of giving up the further board discussion.
Okay, here's what I just want to call out. We have a study session that Dr. Armaki is seeking to lead and has put a lot of time on for our annual plan. We also have an executive session that I actually asked to move to the end so fewer staff would have to stay through to the very, very end. But even back when we thought we would be on time, we were going to end at 8:30. So I think we now are slipping to more like 8:45 p.m. And so for that reason, I would encourage us to say, well, we at least got our resolution done, and I'm happy about that. But I do realize that I would say the consent agenda item did throw us off quite a bit by time. So that's why I say these curveballs are tricky for us.
But it was a really important discussion. So
It was a very important discussion, so I don't regret doing that. I think we needed to talk through it, but I do think that's where our time went tonight. And so I don't know what else to do short of keeping us here till 10 p.m.
So I'll just let people know that I'll send it with WASDA, but it is time a call for any potential positions for WASDA to support. So if people want to think about that ahead of our next meeting, our next Monday
Okay.
meeting, that would be
And then
terrific.
that would be something we would bring to you on the 17th or on the 20th?
Is the 17th Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
that's-
do that. I'll bring that. Jane and I will talk and we'll bring it then.
So we won't be too late if we brought our idea
No,
by
we'll
the
be
17th.
we'll be just fine.
Okay, got it.
And
Okay,
and I
that's a good.
do want to just say I really appreciate Carolyn calling this topic out, and you know, I think that we can't have that happen again. We need to be clear about what our policy is from here forward.
Okay. All right, so we recess for our break. We will take we'll say 15 minutes and then we will start our study session at 6:55. Does that work? Okay. All right, thank you.
Seema, do I stay on this line?
To please stay in the same meeting right where you are, and Jess and I will move the computer.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and following our study session, which ended at 8:50 p.m., we had an executive session of 26 minutes and we are now adjourned. Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and following our study session, which ended at 8:50 p.m., we had an executive session of 26 minutes and we are now adjourned. Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and following our study session, which ended at 8:50 p.m., we had an executive session of 26 minutes and we are now adjourned. Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and following our study session, which ended at 8:50 p.m., we had an executive session of 26 minutes and we are now adjourned. Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and following our study session, which ended at 8:50 p.m., we had an executive session of 26 minutes and we are now adjourned.